Silence was his shield, until a trembling knock revealed a hunted family, reigniting a spark Elias believed dead, and drawing him into a war for a life he never knew he wanted. The forest was silent, blanketed in mist and memory. Elias, a reclusive woodsman with hands hardened by time, had lived alone for over 12 years. No one came to his cabin. No one dared. He had built his world from stone, wood, and silence, safe from the noise of grief. Since the day he buried the only woman he ever loved, he had spoken to almost no one. He thought his heart had turned to ash until the knock. It was faint, hesitant, like hope trying not to be heard. He opened the door and froze. There stood a woman soaked to the bone, her thin coat clinging to her like a second skin. Her eyes, sunken with exhaustion, met his with a silent plea. Behind her, three children huddled close, their clothes wet, their faces pale from cold and fear. The youngest boy hid behind her legs, trembling. The girl held his hand, trying to be brave. The elder stood like a broken soldier, trying to look strong, but failing. "We have nowhere else to go," the woman whispered, her voice cracking. "Just one night. Please." Elias had shut the world out for over a decade. He had closed the door on everything and everyone. But something inside him shifted, something that had not stirred in years. He stepped aside. Inside, the firelight flickered softly. The children clung to its warmth as if it might vanish. Elias wordlessly handed the woman a dry blanket. She clutched it to her chest like a lifeline. "I am Margaret," she said after a long pause. "My husband died last month. His family said we were not their problem. We have walked for 3 days." Elias felt something tighten in his chest. He had known loss, but not like this. Not with three innocent souls watching you fall apart, depending on you to stay strong. He poured them tea and broke bread into pieces, offering what little he had. That night, as the wind howled outside, Elias sat by the fire. Across from him, Margaret stared into the flames, wide awake, hollowed out by grief. Between them lay only silence, but it was a silence filled with unspoken sorrow, a silence that understood. He did not know it yet, but that night would change everything. What began as shelter would become a lifeline, for them and for him. They did not just need a home, they needed a reason to hope again. And so did he. Elias awoke before the sun. For years, his mornings had started with silence, just the groan of cold wood and the hiss of the kettle. But this morning, he heard whispers, children's laughter, a pot clinking, life. For the first time in years, his cabin did not feel like a tomb. He rose quietly, unsure whether to feel comforted or unsettled. The kitchen smelled of warm oats. Margaret stood at the stove, hair pulled back, her thin sweater hugging her shoulders like it was barely holding her together. She did not turn when he entered. "I hope you do not mind," she said softly. "The children were hungry." Elias nodded. He could not find his voice. Her presence, her calmness despite the hollow in her eyes, shook something in him. It was not just her pain that unsettled him. It was how familiar it felt. The children ate in silence, but it was not fear anymore. It was caution. The kind that children learn too early when life teaches them not to trust too quickly. Sam, the youngest, kept stealing glances at Elias, like he was trying to figure out what kind of man he was. Lily whispered stories to her little brother to keep him calm. Thomas, the oldest, barely touched his food, watching every move Elias made. Later that day, Elias found Thomas outside, holding a dull axe awkwardly. "It is too heavy, the pine," the boy said, almost apologetically. Elias showed him how to hold it, how to let the weight do the work. "You will get it," he said, surprising himself. The boy stared at him, almost in disbelief. Elias realized The boy was not used to being taught gently. Inside, Margaret cleaned and swept. She worked like someone afraid of being told to stop. That night, she sat near the fire, sewing Elias's old flannel with careful hands. "We will be gone soon," she said suddenly. "We will find a way." Elias looked at her. "You do not have to." But Margaret did not answer. Her eyes stared into the flames as if she saw something in them. Something dark, something from before. And then came the noise, a sharp crack outside. Not the wind, not an animal. Margaret froze. Elias stood up slowly. His hand moved to the rifle on the wall without thinking. "Stay here," he said. His voice was calm, but Margaret's eyes widened. "You have enemies out here?" she asked. Elias hesitated. "I used to." He stepped outside. The trees were too still. The snow held no tracks. But he knew that sound. He knew the feel of eyes in the woods. The past never stayed buried long, not in a place like this. When he returned inside, the fire had gone quiet. The children were asleep, but Margaret was sitting up, staring at the door. "They found us," she whispered. Elias did not ask who. Not yet. But he knew one thing. Something was coming. And this family he never meant to take in, this woman, these children, might now be in more danger than they had ever known. Elias did not sleep that night. He sat near the door, rifle across his lap, eyes locked on the window. The crack in the woods, it had not been wind, and Margaret's words haunted him. "They found us." She had spoken them not with panic, but with resignation, like someone who had been running for too long. Morning came cold and grey. Margaret was already awake, folding blankets with slow, practiced hands. The children ate quietly, though they looked at Elias now with questions in their eyes. Sam asked if the sound last night was just a branch falling. Elias did not answer. Later, while the children gathered pine cones near the edge of the clearing, Margaret approached. Her voice was low. "There are things I did not tell you. About my husband." Elias did not speak. He let her talk. "He was not a kind man," she began. "He made enemies. He owed money. When he died, they did not come to mourn. They came to collect. I begged his cousin to help us. He said we were not worth the trouble, that if we stayed, they would come for us too." Elias looked at her closely. "So you ran?" "I did not know where else to go," she said, her voice cracking. "I remembered passing a cabin years ago when we traveled through these woods. I prayed it was still there. I did not expect you to open the door." He wanted to ask more, who they were, what they might do. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her hands trembled. Maybe it was the bruise still fading under her sleeve. Whatever her past was, it had already punished her more than enough. But he could not ignore the feeling growing in his gut. That evening, Elias walked the tree line. He found something in the snow, boot prints, not his, not hers, recent. He followed them a short way before they vanished. Whoever it was knew the forest too well. They were watching. When he returned, the children were inside playing quietly with carved sticks. Margaret was at the stove stirring stew. She looked up and read his face instantly. "They are close, aren't they?" "Yes." Margaret swallowed hard. "If we stay, they will hurt you. They are not just debt collectors. They are worse." Elias did not flinch. "Let them try." That night, thunder rolled across the hills. Lightning lit up the cabin in flashes. As the storm raged outside, Elias loaded the rifle. He sat in his chair again, back straight, eyes fixed on the door. He was not afraid. Not for himself. But for the first time in years, he had something to protect. And just before dawn, he heard it again. The knock. But this time, it was not weak. It was slow, deliberate, like someone who had come to collect what they believed was theirs. Elias rose silently from the chair, rifle already in hand. Margaret clutched her children to her chest. Her eyes were wide but dry. She had cried too much to waste another tear. The knock came again, louder, slower, the kind of knock that did not ask for permission, but dared you to say no. He motioned for Margaret to take the children into the back room. She obeyed without a word, gathering them like fragile glass. As the door clicked shut behind them, the cabin grew still. Elias opened the door. Two men stood in the snow, soaked and steaming with menace. One wore a crooked grin. The other held a crowbar low at his side. "We do not want trouble," the grinning one said. "Just the woman. And the kids. Business left unfinished." Elias did not blink. "She's not yours to take." The second man stepped forward. "She was married to our cousin. He owed us more than money. She knows things that do not belong to her." Elias kept his rifle aimed low, but steady. "You take one more step, and I make sure you never take another." The grinning man laughed. "You are just some lonely old woodsman. What, you think this is your family now?" Elias said nothing, but his silence roared. The second man moved suddenly, raising the crowbar. A shot cracked through the trees like lightning. The metal bar fell to the snow first. Then the man followed. The other froze. "Leave now," Elias growled, voice like a glacier cracking, "or I finish this." The man stumbled back into the woods, slipping in blood and snow. When the sound of his footsteps faded, Elias shut the door. He leaned against it, breathing hard, rifle still smoking in his hands. Margaret came out slowly. Her eyes found his. "You could have let them take us." "I could have," Elias said. "But then I would still be alone." She stepped closer. Her hands shook as she took his. "Why would you do this for us?" He looked down at her, his voice low. "Because someone should have done it for me when I needed it most." Weeks passed. No one came back. Spring arrived early that year, melting the snow, softening the earth. Elias began carving a larger table. Thomas helped him chop wood. Lily started planting flowers near the porch. Sam learned to whistle. And one morning, as the sun rose through the trees, Margaret stepped outside and said the words neither of them had dared to speak. "This feels like home." Elias nodded, eyes misting. "It is." He had taken them in out of instinct. He had protected them out of duty. But he kept them because somewhere along the way, they became his family. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to my channel. Your support helps me bring you more unforgettable stories like this one. Thank you for listening.